This week on the WDW Reflections podcast, the guys and I are going to be talking about a now extinct Walt Disney World attraction, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Who wants to see a toad? I want to see the Headless Horseman.
Welcome to the WDW Reflections podcast. Here, we'd love to talk about the Walt Disney World Resort, the way we remember it, how it's changed, and why we still enjoy visiting the most magical place on Earth. So come with us on a podcast journey as we reflect on the WDW Reflections podcast. Hey y'all, welcome to the WDW Reflections podcast, your unofficial guide through Disney World memories and their connections to the parks that we know and love today. So this week, we thought we would jump back, I guess you could say really back in time. And this attraction has been gone for almost 20 years. Before we get into the Magic Kingdom version in Florida, we should probably talk about the fact that this was an opening day attraction at Disneyland first, way back in 1955. The ride is based on Disney's short film adaptation of the book The Wind in the Willows, which was released as a package film, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and it was released in 1949. So really just a couple of years before the attraction opened in Disneyland in 1955. So in the Disneyland version, guests entered through a recreation of Toad Hall, and they boarded their ride vehicles, which were all designed to look like early 1900s era automobiles. Each one of the multicolored ride vehicles was named after a character from the film. Each ride vehicle was a convertible and could sit 4 rides comfortably. And the back seats were slightly elevated, just a little bit higher than the front seat, so that you could see, if you were sitting in the back seat, your view of the ride wasn't obstructed by those sitting in front of you. And then each scene in the attraction features a lot of characters, but they're all 2D, meaning they're flat, painted, like plywood boards. So the journey begins when the ride vehicle crashes into Toad Hall's library, passing by Angus McBadger, who's gotten into a bit of trouble. Then through the fireplace, where you narrowly escape a falling suit of armor. Then the ride vehicle breaks through a set of doors into an interior hallway. You see weasels swinging from chandeliers. And then out of Toad Hall, through the countryside, where you pass by Ratty's house, past the docks, into a warehouse full of explosive barrels, where you crash through a brick wall just before the explosives go off. This takes the guest into the streets of London, passing a fountain of Mr. Toad, through a dark room and onto a dark set of railroad tracks, where your ride vehicle collides head-on with a train. And then the final scene of the attraction is a lighthearted depiction through hell, oddly enough, which was actually not in the book or in the film versions of the story. So a little bit off the story from what you saw if you'd watched The Wind of the Willows, or read The Wind of the Willows, or seen the movie from Disney. And then after you pass through that lighthearted depiction of hell, you pass back through a couple of doors back to the exit of the attraction. It's still there. Disneyland guests are lucky enough to still be able to enjoy Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Here in 2022, as we're recording this, it's still an attraction that Disneyland guests have the opportunity to enjoy. And let's talk now about the Walt Disney World version. So the Magic Kingdom version was an opening day attraction also, but Disney World opened on October 1st of 1971. The ride vehicles in Walt Disney World version were basically the same as they were in the Disneyland version. They still were those old convertible jalopies, and 4 seats. You could, this back seat was slightly elevated. All of that stuff was pretty much the same. The load unload area looked it's very similar to what your typical Disney dark ride loading area looked like. So the walls were painted in very detailed murals. They were painted to look like you were outside an old English style building, brick and all that kind of stuff. So standing over one of the tunnels where your ride vehicle would eventually exit was also a collection of 2D characters from that you would see in the attraction. So once you loaded your old-timey automobile ride vehicle, your car would make a hard left or a hard right, because one of the differences here in the Disney World version is that there were 2 tracks. So this meant that depending on the side of the attraction you entered, you would have a completely different experience as the tracks traveled in their own distinct show scenes. So the left side and the right side, 2 completely different experiences.
Like an early version of the Great Movie Ride.
Why are you going to get me on misty-eyed? But yes, sort of like that, where you, in the Great Movie Ride, you could, you would pass through the gangster scene to get to the Western scene, or maybe you would be at the gangster scene. Kind of the same thing. But the left side and the right side traveled along their own separate tracks and had 2 different experiences. So track number 1, as you entered through Toad Hall, you would pass through a rural English countryside, passing by barnyard animals, and then you would crash into a chicken coop where your presence startled a bunch of poor chickens, causing them to squawk and holler and, just lots of chicken noises. Then it's on through a tunnel with plenty of warning signs out the tunnel, where you would pass a policeman giving directions by blowing on a whistle. So after you pass by the policeman whistling at you, your car would take a right-hand turn into a jail, where a judge declares you and your fellow riders are guilty, and they send your car through several jail cells. After you pass through these jail cells, your cars enter into another dark scene where a shootout between cops and some of those villainous weasels is occurring. And the guns, for the special effects, had red lights at the end so you'd hear the bang of the gun, and the red light would flash at the muzzle of the guns to simulate that gunfire. So just a cool little special effect. Most of the attraction is flat, painted, almost like a cell that they would paint for an animated movie. That's what it looked like. So when they did a little special effect with the gunfire at the end of the gun, it was pretty cool. So you pass through the gunfight between the cops and the weasels, and as your car continues past this scene, police barriers open up to reveal railroad tracks. And as you'll see warning signs and the red, or the black and white railroad crossing signs and the red flashing lights and stuff like that. You ominously hear in the distance loud train bells ringing towards you. Your vehicle then makes another right-hand turn, placing you and your car right onto the railroad tracks when you see the headlight of an oncoming train directly in front of you. Your car then collides with the locomotive, which sends you and your ride vehicle into the hell scene. And the hell scene was, again, same stuff, painted scenes and all that, but there's little goofy looking red demons with horns and stuff, and crooked teeth and all that kind of stuff, and lots of fire and brimstone, a very cartoonish version.
Listen to more of our podcast about the adventures of Mr. Toad on episode 39 of the WDW Reflections podcast. Look for it on our website. We'd love to hear from you. Please like, share, and subscribe. See you real soon.